We're going over the book of Ezekiel, starting with chapter 21. 21 goes over, look southward, a sharp sword. We get into 22, take off the crown, and Israel sins. And 23 goes into an unclean land and two daughters. And we get into judgment of the nations and adultery punished. And 24 get into a boiling pot, and Ezekiel a sign. And 25 gets into, changing the pages here, Ammon's future. 26 go into trouble for Tyrus, which is another name for Satan. 27 goes into a desolate city, a city glory days. And 28 going into coming destruction down to the pit. And 29 goes into message for Egypt, excuse my puppy, and Egypt's desolation. So let's get into chapter 21 of Ezekiel. And the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face toward Jerusalem, and drop the word toward the holy places, and prophesy against the land of Israel, and say to the land of Israel, Thus said Ahiah El Elohi, which means mighty God, Behold, I am against thee, and will draw forth my sword out of his sheath, and will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked. Seeing then that I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, therefore shall my sword go forth out of his sheath against all flesh from the south to the north, that all flesh may know that I am Ahiah, have drawn forth my sword out of his sheath. It shall not return any more. Sigh, therefore, thou son of man, with the breaking of thy loins, and with bitterness sigh before their eyes. And it shall be, when they say unto thee, Wherefore sighest thou? That thou shalt answer, For the tidings, because it cometh, and every heart shall melt, and all hands shall be feeble, and every spirit shall faint, and all knees shall be weak as water. Behold, it cometh, and shall be brought to pass, said Ahiah El Elohi. Again, the word of Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus says Ahiah, Say, a sword is sharpened, and also furbished. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contempted the rod of my son as every tree, and he had given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened, and it is furbished, to give it into the hand of the slayer. Cry and howl, son of man, for it shall be upon my people. It shall be upon all the princes of Israel. Terrors by reason of the sword shall be upon my people. Smite therefore upon thy thigh, because it is a trial, and what it the sword contemned, even the rod? It shall be no more, said Ahiah El Elohi. Thou, therefore, son of man, prophesy, and smite thy hands together, and let the sword be doubled the third time. The sword of the slain, it is the sword of the great men that are slain, which entered into their privy chambers. I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, that their heart may faint, and their ruins be multiplied. Ah, it is made bright, it is wrapped up for the slaughter. Go thee one way or other, either on the right hand or on the left, whithersoever thy face is set. I will also smite my hands together, and I will cause my fury to rest. I, Ahiah, have said it. The word of Ahiah came unto me again, saying, Also, thou son of man, appoint thee 2 ways, that the sword of the king of Babylon may come. Both twain shall come forth out of one land, and choose thou a place. choose it at the head of the way to the city. Appoint a way that the sword may come to Rabbah of the Ammonites, and to Judah in Jerusalem, the defenced. For the king of Babylon stood at the parting of the way at the head of the two ways to use divination. He made his arrows bright, and consulted with images he looked in the liver. At his right hand was the divination for Jerusalem, to appoint captains to open the mouth in the slaughter, to lift up the voice with shouting, to appoint battering rams against the gates, to cast them out, and to build a fort. And it shall be unto them as a false divination in their sight, to them that have sworn oaths, but he will call to remembrance the iniquity, that they may be taken. Therefore thus says Ahiah el Elohi, because you have made your iniquity to be remembered, and that your transgressions are discovered, so that in all your doings your sins do appear. Because I say that you are come to remembrance, you shall be taken with the hand. And thou, profaned wicked prince of Israel, whose day is come when iniquity shall have an end. Thus says Ahiah mighty God, remove the diadem and take off the crown. This shall not be the same. Exalt him that is low, and abase him that is high. I will overturn it, and it shall be no more, until he come whose right it is, and I will give it him. And thou, son of man, prophesy and say, thus said Ahiah mighty God, concerning the Ammonites, and concerning their reproach. Even say thou, the sword is drawn, for the slaughter it is furbished, to consume because of the glittering. Whilst they see vanity unto thee, whilst they divine a lie unto thee, to bring thee upon the necks of them that are slain, of the wicked, whose day is come, when their iniquity shall have an end. Shall I cause it to return into its sheath? I will judge thee in the place where thou wast created, the land of thy nativity. And I will pour out my indignation upon thee, and I will blow against thee in the fire of my wrath, and deliver thee into the hand of brutish men, and skillful to destroy. Thou shalt be for fuel to the fire, thy blood shall be in the midst of the land. Thou shalt be no more remembered, for I, Ahiah, have spoken it. Chapter 22. Israel's sins. Moreover, the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, wilt thou judge the bloody city? Yea, thou shalt show her all her abominations. Then say thou, thus says Ahiah el Elohi, the city shedded blood in the midst of it, that her times may come, and make it idols against herself, to defile herself. Thou art become guilty in thy blood that thou hast shed, and hast defiled thyself in thine idols which thou hast made. And thou hast caused the days to draw near, and art come even unto thy years. Therefore have I made thee a reproach unto the heathen, and a mocking to all countries. Those that be near, and those that be far from thee shall mock thee, which art infamous and much vexed. Behold, the princes of Israel, every one, were in thee to their power to shed blood. In thee have they set light by father and mother. In the midst of thee have they dealt by oppression with the stranger. In thee have they vexed thy fatherless and the widow. Thou hast despised mine holy things, and hast profaned my Sabbaths. In thee are men that carry tales to shed blood, and in thee they eat upon the mountains. In the midst of thee they commit lewdness. In thee have they discovered their father's nakedness. In thee have they humbled her that was set apart for pollution. And one had committed abomination with his neighbor's wife, and another had lewdly defiled his daughter-in-law, and another in thee had humbled his sister, his father's daughter. In thee have they taken gifts to shed blood. Thou hast taken usury and increased, and thou hast greedily gained of thy neighbors by extortion, and hast forgotten me, said Ahiah mighty God. Behold, therefore I have smitten my hand at thine dishonest gain which thou hast made, and at thy blood which hath been in the midst of thee. Can thine heart endure, or can thine hands be strong in the days that I have dealt with thee? I, Ahiah, have spoken it, and will do it. And I will scatter thee among the heathen, and disperse thee in the countries, and will consume thy filthiness out of thee. And thou shalt take thine inheritance in thyself in the sight of the heathen, and thou shalt know that I am Ahiah El Elohi. And the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, the house of Israel is to me become dross. All they are brass and tin and iron and lead in the midst of the furnace. They are even the dross of silver. Therefore, thus says Ahiah mighty God, because you all become dross, behold, therefore I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem, as they gather silver and brass and iron and lead and tin into the midst of the furnace, to blow the fire upon it, to melt it, so will I gather you in mine anger and in my fury, and I will leave you there and melt you. Yeah, I will gather you and blow upon you in the fire of my wrath, and you shall be melted in the midst thereof. As silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall you be melted in the midst thereof. And you shall know that I am Ahiah, have poured out my fury upon you. And the word of Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto her, Thou art the land that is not cleansed, nor rained upon in the day of indignation. There is a conspiracy of her prophets in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravaging the prey. They have devoured souls, they have taken the treasure and precious things. They have made her many widows in the midst thereof. Her priests have violated my law, and have profaned mine holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and the profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths. And I have profaned among them. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravaging the prey, to shed blood and to destroy souls, to get dishonest gain. And her prophets have dubbed them with untempered mortar, seeing vanity and divination, divining lies unto them, saying, Thus said Ahiah mighty God, when Ahiah had not spoken. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery, and have vexed the poor and needy. Yeah, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully. And I sought for a man among them, and that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Therefore have I poured out my indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed upon their heads, says Ahiah mighty God. Chapter 23, 2 Daughters. The word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, there were 2 women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and they bruised the tits of their virginity. And the names of them were Ahalia, an elder, and Ahaliah her sister. And they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Thus were their names Samaria and Ahalah, and Jerusalem Ahalabah. And Ahalah played the harlot when she was mine, and she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians her neighbors, which were clothed with blue captains and rulers, all of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Thus she committed her whoredoms with them, and all them that were the chosen men of Assyria, and with all of whom she doted. With all their idols she defiled herself. Neither left she her whoredoms brought from Egypt, for in her youth they lay with her, and they bruised the breast of her virginity. and poured their whoredoms upon her. Wherefore have I delivered her into the hand of her lovers, and into the hand of the Assyrians, upon whom she doted. These discovered her nakedness. They took her sons and her daughters, and slew her with the sword. And she became famous among women, for they have executed judgment upon her. And when her sister Ahalabah saw this, she was more corrupt in her inordinate love than she, and in her whoredoms more than her sister in her whoredoms. She doted upon the Assyrians, her neighbors, captains, and rulers, clothed most gloriously, horsemen riding upon horses, all of them desirable young men. Then I saw that she was defiled, that they took both one way, and that she increased her whoredoms, for when she saw men portrayed upon the wall the images of the Chaldeans, portrayed with vermilion, girded with girdles upon their loins, exceeding in dyed attire upon their heads, all of them princes to look to, after the manner of the Babylonians of Chaldea, the land of their nativity. And as soon as she saw them with her eyes, she doted upon them, and sent messengers into Chaldea. And the Babylonians came to her into the bed of love, and they defiled her with their whoredom. And she was polluted with them, and her mind was alienated from them. So she discovered her whoredoms, and discovered her nakedness. Then my mind was alienated from her, like as my mind was alienated from her sister. Yet she multiplied her whoredoms in calling to remembrance the days of her youth, wherein she had played the harlot in the land of Egypt. For she doted upon their paramours, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. Thus thou callest to remembrance the lewdness of thy youth, and bruising the teats by the Egyptians for the paps of thy youth. Therefore, O Ahalabah, thus says Ahiah, mighty God, behold, I will raise up thy lovers against thee, from whom thy mind is alienated, and I will bring them against thee on every side, the Babylonians and all the Chaldeans, Pekod and Shoah and Koah, and all the Assyrians with them, all of them desirable young men, captains and rulers, great lords and renowned, all of them riding upon horses. And they shall come against thee with chariots, wagons, and wheels, and with an assembly of people, which shall set against thee buckler and shield and helmet round about. And I will set judgment before them, and they shall judge thee according to their judgments. And I will set my jealousy against thee, and they shall deal furiously with thee. They shall take away thy nose and thine ears, and thy remnant shall fall by the sword. They shall take thy sons and thy daughters, and thy residue shall be devoured by the fire. They shall also strip thee out of thy clothes, and take away thy fair jewels. Thus will I make thy lewdness to cease from thee, and thy whoredoms brought from the land of Egypt, so that thou shalt not lift up thine eyes unto them, nor remember Egypt any more. For thus says Ahiah, mighty God, behold, I will deliver thee into the hand of them whom thou hatest, into the hand of them from whom thy mind is alienated. And they shall deal with thee hatefully, and shall take away all thy labor, and shall leave thee naked and bare. And the nakedness of thy whoredom shall be discovered, both thy lewdness and thy whoredoms. I will do these things unto thee, because thou hast gone a whoring after the heathen, and because thou art polluted with their idols. Thou hast walked in the way of thy sister, therefore will I give her cup unto thine hand. Thus says Ahiah, mighty God, thou shalt drink of thy sister's cup deep and large. Thou shalt be laughed to scorn, and had in derision, it containeth much. Thou shalt be filled with drunkenness and sorrow, with the cup of astonishment and desolation, with the cup of thy sister Samaria. Thou shalt even drink it and suck it out, and thou shalt break the shreds thereof, and pluck off thine own breast. For I, Ahiah, have spoken it. Therefore, thus says Ahiah, mighty God, because thou hast forgotten me and cast me behind thy back, therefore bear thou also thy lewdness and thy whoredoms. Ahiah, mighty God, said moreover unto me, Son of man, wilt thou judge Ahala and Ahalabah? Yea, declare unto them their abominations, that they have committed adultery, and blood is in their hands, and with their idols have they committed adultery, and have also caused their sons, whom they bear unto me, to pass for them through the fire, to devour them. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day, and have profaned my Sabbaths. But when they had slain their children to their idols, then they came the same day into my sanctuary to profane it. And lo, thus have they done in the midst of mine house. And furthermore, that you have sent for men to come from far, unto whom a messenger was sent, and lo, they came, for whom thou didst wash thyself, paintest thine eyes, and deckedst thyself with ornaments, and sattest upon a stately bed, and a table prepared before it, whereupon thou hast set mine incense and mine oil. And the voice of the multitude, being at ease, was with her, and with the men of the common sort were brought Sabeans from the wilderness, which put bracelets upon thy hands, and beautiful crowns upon thy heads. Then said I unto her that was old in adulteries, will they now commit whoredoms with her, and she with them? Yet they went in unto her as they go into a woman that played the harlot. So went they in unto Ahala, and unto Ahalabah, the lewd women. And the righteous men, they shall judge them after the manner of adulteresses, and after the manner of women that shed blood, because they are adulteresses, and blood is in their hands. For thus said Ahiah el Elohi, I will bring up a company upon them, and will give them to be removed and spoiled. And the company shall stone them with stones, and dispatch them with their swords. They shall slay their sons and their daughters, and burn up their houses with fire. Thus will I cause lewdness to cease out of the land, that all women may be taught not to do after your lewdness. And they shall recompense your lewdness upon you, and you shall bear the sins of your idols, and you shall know that I am Ahiah, mighty God. 24. A boiling pot. Again, in the 9th year, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, write thee the name of the day, even of this same day the king of Babylon set himself against Jerusalem this same day. And utter a parable unto the rebellious house, and say unto them, Thus says Ahiah el Elohi, set on a pot, set it on, and also pour water into it. Gather the pieces thereof into it, even every good piece, the thigh and the shoulder. Fill it with the choice bones. Take the choice of the flock, and burn also the bones under it. And make it boil well, and let them see it, the bones of it therein. Wherefore thus said Ahiah el Elohi, woe to the bloody city, to the pot whose scum is therein, and whose scum is not gone out of it. Bring it out piece by piece. Let no lot fall upon it, for her blood is in the midst of her. She set it upon the top of a rock. She poured it not upon the ground, to cover it with dust, that it might cause fury to come up to take vengeance. I have set her blood upon the top of a rock, that it should not be covered. Therefore thus says Ahiah, mighty God, woe to the bloody city! I will even make the pile for fire great. Heap on wood, kindle the fire, consume the flesh, and spice it well, and let the bones be burned. And set it empty upon the coals thereof, that the brass of it may be hot. and may burn, and that the filthiness of it may be molten in it, that the scum of it may be consumed. She had wearied herself with lies, and her great scum went not forth out of her. Her scum shall be in the fire. And thy filthiness is lewdness, because I have purged thee, and thou wast not purged. Thou shalt not be purged from thy filthiness any more, till I have caused my fury to rest upon thee. I, Ahiah, have spoken it. It shall come to pass, and I will do it. I will not go back, neither will I spare. Neither will I repent according to thy ways, and according to thy doings shall they judge thee, said Ahiah el Elohi. Also the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, behold, I take away from thee the desire of thine eyes with a stroke. Yet neither shalt thou mourn nor weep, neither shall thy tears run down. Forbear to cry, make no mourning for the dead. Bind the tire of thine head upon thee, and put on thy shoes upon thy feet. And cover not thy lips, and eat not the bread of men. So I spake unto the people in the morning, and at even my wife died, and I did in the morning as I was commanded. And the people said unto me, Wilt thou not tell us what these things are to us, that thou dost so? Then I answered them, The word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Speak unto the house of Israel. Thus says Ahiah mighty God, Behold, I will profane my sanctuary, the excellency of your strength, the desire of your eyes, and that which your soul pitieth. And your sons and your daughters whom you have left shall fall by the sword. And you shall do as I have done. You shall not cover your lips, nor eat the bread of men. And your tires shall be upon your heads, and your shoes upon your feet. You shall not mourn nor weep, but you shall pine away for your iniquities, and mourn one toward another. Thus Ezekiel is unto you a sign. According to all that he had done shall you do. And when this cometh, you shall know that I am Ahiah mighty God. Also, thou son of man, shall it not be in the day when I take from them their strength, the joy of their glory, the desire of their eyes, and that whereupon they set their minds, their sons and their daughters, that he that escaped in the day shall come unto thee, to cause thee to hear it with thine ears? In that day shall thy mouth be open to him which is escaped, and thou shalt speak, and be no more dumb. And thou shalt be a sign unto them, and they shall know that I am Ahiah. Chapter 25, Ezekiel a sign. The word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against the Ammonites, and prophesy against them. And say unto the Ammonites, Hear the word of Ahiah mighty God. Thus says Ahiah el Elohi, because thou says, Aha, against my sanctuary, when it was profaned, and against the land of Israel, when it was desolate, and against the house of Judah, when they went into captivity. Behold, therefore, I will deliver thee to the men of the east for a possession, and they shall set their palaces in thee, and make their dwellings in thee. They shall eat thy fruit, and they shall drink thy milk. And I will make Rabbah a stable for camels, and the Ammonites a couching place for flocks. And you shall know that I am Ahiah. For thus said Ahiah mighty God, because thou hast clapped thine hands, and stamped with thy feet, and rejoiced in heart with all thy despite against the land of Israel. Behold, therefore I will stretch out my hand upon thee, and will deliver thee for a spoil to the heathen. And I will cut thee off from the people, and I will cause thee to perish out of the countries. I will destroy thee, and thou shalt know that I am Ahiah. Thus said Ahiah mighty God, because that Moab and Seir do say, Behold, the house of Judah is like unto all the heathen. Therefore, behold, I will open the side of Moab from the cities, from his cities which are on his frontiers, the glory of the country, Beth Shemoth, Baal Meon, and Kiriathaim unto the men of the east with the Ammonites, and will give them in possession, that the Ammonites may not be remembered among the nations. And I will execute judgment upon Moab, and they shall know that I am Ahiah. Thus said Ahiah, mighty God, because that Edom had dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and had greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Therefore, thus says Ahiah, mighty God, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it. And I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger, and according to my fury. And they shall know my vengeance, says Ahiah, mighty God. Thus says Ahiah, mighty God, because of the Philistines have dealt by revenge, and have taken vengeance with a despiteful heart, to destroy it for the old hatred. Therefore, thus says Ahiah El Elohi, behold, I will stretch out my hand upon the Philistines, and I will cut off the cherethims, and destroy the remnant of the sea coast. And I will execute great vengeance upon them with furious rebukes. And they shall know that I am Ahiah, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them. Chapter 26. Trouble for Tyrus. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the first day of the month, that the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, because that Tyrus has said against Jerusalem, Aha, she is broken, that was the gates of the people, she is turned unto me, I shall replenish, now she is laid waste. Therefore thus says Ahiah, mighty God, behold, I am against thee, O Tyrus, and will cause many nations to come up against thee, as the sea causeth his waves to come up. And they shall destroy the walls of Tyrus, and break down her towers. I will also scrape her dust from her, and make her like the top of a rock. It shall be a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea. For I have spoken it, said Ahiah, mighty God. And it shall become a spoil to the nations. And her daughters which are in the field shall be slain by the sword. And they shall know that I am Ahiah, mighty God. For thus says Ahiah, mighty God, behold, I will bring upon Tyrus Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, a king of kings from the north, with horses and with chariots, and with horsemen and companies and much people. He shall slay with the sword thy daughters in the field. And he shall make a fort against thee, and cast a mount against thee, and lift up the buckler against thee. And he shall set engines of war against thy walls, and with his axes he shall break down thy towers. By reason of the abundance of his horses, their dust shall cover thee. Thy walls shall shake at the noise of their horsemen, and of the wheels, and of the chariots, when he shall enter into thy gates, as men enter into a city wherein is made a breach. With the hoofs of his horse shall he tread down all thy streets. He shall slay the people by the sword, and thy strong garrisons shall go down to the ground. And they shall make a spoil of thy riches, and shall make a prey of thy merchandise. And they shall break down thy walls, and destroy thy pleasant houses, and they shall lay thy stones in thy timber, and thy dust in the midst of the water. And I will cause the noise of thy songs to cease, and the sounds of thy harps shall be no more heard. And I will make thee like the top of a rock. Thou shalt be a place to spread nets upon. Thou shalt be built no more, for I, Ahiah, have spoken it, said Ahiah, mighty God. Thus says Ahiah, mighty God, to Tyrus, shall not isles shake at the sound of thy fall? When the wounded cry, when the slaughter is made in the midst of thee? Then all the princes of the sea shall come down from their thrones, and lay away their robes, and put off their broidered garments. They shall clothe themselves with trembling. They shall sit upon the ground, and shall tremble at every moment and be astonished at thee. And they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and say to thee, How art thou destroyed that was inhabited of seafaring men, the renowned city, which was strong in the sea, she and her inhabitants, which caused thee terror to be on all that haunted. Now shall the isles tremble in the day of thy fall. Yea, the isles that are in the sea shall be troubled at thy departure. For thus says a high and mighty God, When I shall make thee a desolate city, like the cities that are not inhabited, when I shall bring up the deep upon thee, and great waters shall cover thee, when I shall bring thee down with them that descend into the pit, with the people of old time, and shall set thee in the low parts of the earth, in places desolate of old, with them that go down to the pit, that thou be not inhabited, and I shall set glory in the land of the living. I will make thee a terror, and thou shalt be no more. Though thou be sought for, yet thou shalt not never be found again, said a high and mighty God. Chapter 27, A City's Glory Days. The word of mighty God Ahiah came again unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyrus, and say unto Tyrus, O thou that art situated at the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles. Thus says a high and mighty God, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am of perfect beauty. Thy borders are in the midst of the seas. Thy builders have perfected thy beauty. They have made all thy shipboards of fir trees of Sinir. They have taken cedars from Lebanon to make mast for thee. Of the oaks of Bashan have they made thine oars. The company of the Asherites have made thy benches of ivory, brought out of the isles of Chittim. Fine linen with broidered work from Egypt was that which thou spreadest for to be thy sail. Blue and purple from the isles of Elisha was that which covered thee. The inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners. Thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee were thy pilots. The ancients of Gebal and the wise men thereof were in thee thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. They of Persia and of Lud and of Put were in thine army, thy men of war. They hanged the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. The men of Arvad with thine army were upon thy walls round about, and the Gammerdins were in thy towers. They hang their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy beauty perfect. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kind of riches. With silver, iron, tin, and lead they traded in thy fairs. Javan, Tubal, and Meshach, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy markets. They of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of the Den were thy merchants. Many isles were thy merchandise of thine hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Syria was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of the wars of thy making. They occupied in thy fairs with emeralds, purple, and broidered work, and fine linen, and coral, and agate. Judah and the land of Israel, they were thy merchants. They traded in thy market wheat and minnith, and penag, and honey, and oil, and balm. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wars of thy making, for the multitude of all riches in the wine of Helbon and white wool. Then also and Javan going to and fro occupied in thy fairs. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were in thy market. Calamus were in thy market. Dedan was thy merchant in precious clothes for chariots. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they occupied with thee in lamps and rams and goats. In these were they thy merchants. The merchants of Sheba and Raamah, they were thy merchants. They occupied in thy fairs with chief of all spices and with all precious stones and gold. Haran and Canaan and Eden, thy merchants of Sheba, Ashur and Kilmad were thy merchants. These were thy merchants in all sorts of things, in blue cloth and embroidered work, and in chests of rich apparel, bound with cords and made of cedar among thy merchandise. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou wast replenished, and made very glorious in the midst of the seas. Thy rowers have brought thee unto great waters. The east wind had broken thee in the midst of the seas. Thy riches and thy fairs, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and thy occupiers of thy merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, and in all thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the midst of the seas in the day of thy ruin. The suburbs shall shake at the sound of the cry of thy pilots, and all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all that pilots of the sea shall come down from their ships. They shall stand upon the land, and shall cause their voice to be heard against thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast upon dust upon their heads. They shall wallow themselves in the ashes, and they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee with bitterness of heart and bitter wailing. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and lament over thee, saying, What city is like Tyrus, like thee destroyed in the midst of the sea? When thy waters went forth out of the seas, thou fillest many people. Thou didst enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of thy riches, and of thy merchandise. In the time when thou shalt be broken by the seas in the depths of the waters, thy merchandise and all thy company in the midst of thee shall fall. All the inhabitants of the isles shall be astonished at thee, and their kings shall be sore afraid. They shall be troubled in their countenance. The merchants among the people shall hiss at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shall be any more. Chapter 28, Down to the Pit. The word of mighty God Ahiah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus said Ahiah, mighty God, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man, and not God. Though thou set thine heart as the heart of a God, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding thou hast gotten thee riches, and hast gotten gold and silver into the treasuries. By the great wisdom and by the traffic hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Therefore thus says Ahiah, mighty God, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of God, behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against thy beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. They shall bring thee down to the pit, and thou shalt die the deaths of them that are slain in the midst of the seas. Wilt thou yet say before him that slayed thee, I am a God? But thou shalt be a man, and no God, in the hand of him that slayeth thee. Thou shalt die the deaths of the uncircumcised by the hand of strangers. For I have spoken it, says Ahiah, mighty God. Moreover, the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation against the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus said Ahiah, mighty God, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of mighty God Ahiah. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee, in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covered, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of mighty God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of mighty God Ahiah, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore will I bring forth a fire from the midst of thee. It shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. Again, the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Zidon, and prophesy against it, and say, Thus said Ahiah mighty God, Behold, I am against thee, O Zidon, and I will be glorified in the midst of thee, and they shall know that I am Ahiah, when I shall have executed judgments in her, and shall be sanctified in her. For I will send into her pestilence and blood into her streets, and the wounded shall be judged in the midst of her by the sword upon her on every side. And they shall know that I am Ahiah. And there shall be no more a pricking briar unto the house of Israel, nor any grievous thorn of all that are round about them, that despise them. And they shall know that I am Ahiah mighty God. Thus says Ahiah mighty God, when I shall have gathered the house of Israel, excuse my puppies. Verse 25 again. Thus says Ahiah mighty God, when I shall have gathered the house of Israel from the people among whom they were scattered, and shall be sanctified in them in the sight of the heathen, then shall they dwell in their land that I have given to my servant Jacob. And they shall dwell safely therein, and shall build houses and plant vineyards. Yea, they shall dwell with confidence when I have executed judgments upon all those that despise them round about them. And they shall know that I am Ahiah, their mighty God. Chapter 29, Egypt's desolation. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month, the word of mighty God Ahiah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and say, Thus says Ahiah mighty God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. But I would put hooks in thy jaws, and I will cause the fish of thy rivers to stick unto thy scales. And I will bring thee up out of the midst of thy rivers, and all the fish of thy rivers shall stick unto thy scales. And I will leave thee thrown into the wilderness, thee and all the fish of thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open fields. Thou shalt not be brought together, nor gathered. I have given thee for meat to the beast of the field, and to the fowls of the heaven. And all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am Ahiah mighty God. because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. When they took hold of thee by the hand, thou didst break and rend all their shoulder. And when they leaned upon thee, thou breakest and madest all their loins to be at a stand. Therefore thus says Ahijah, mighty God, Behold, I will bring a sword upon thee, and cut off man and beast out of thee. And the land of Egypt shall be desolate and waste, and they shall know that I am Ahijah, mighty God, because he had said, The river is mine, and I have made it. Behold, therefore I am against thee, and against thy rivers, and I will make the land of Egypt utterly waste and desolate, from the tower of Sarin even unto the border of Ethiopia. No foot of man shall pass through it, nor foot of beast shall pass through it, neither shall it be inhabited 40 years. And I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her cities among the cities that are laid waste shall be desolate 40 years. I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse them through the countries. Yet thus says Ahijah, mighty God, At the end of 40 years will I gather the Egyptians from the people whither they were scattered, and I will bring again the captivity of Egypt, and will cause them to return into the land of Pathros, into the land of their inhabitation. Excuse my puppies. And they shall be there a base kingdom. It shall be the basest of the kingdoms, neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations. For I will diminish them, that they shall no more rule over them, over the nations. And it shall be no more the confidence of the house of Israel, which bringeth their iniquity to remembrance, when they shall look after them, but they shall know that I am Ahijah, mighty God. And it came to pass in the 27th year, in the 1st month, in the 1st day of the month, the word of mighty God Ahijah came unto me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, caused his army to serve a great service against Tyrus. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was peeled. Yet had he no wages, nor his army, for Tyrus, for the service that he had served against it. Therefore thus says Ahijah, mighty God, Behold, I will give the land of Egypt unto Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall take her multitude, and take her spoil, and take her prey, and it shall be the wages for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt for his labor wherewith he served against it, because they wrought for me, said Ahijah, mighty God. In that day will I cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and I will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am Ahijah, mighty God. Excuse my puppies. Chapter 30, the last chapter for today. Egypt allies to fall. The word of mighty God Ahijah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus says Ahijah, mighty God, How ye, woe worth the day! For the day is near, even the day of Ahijah is near. A cloudy day it shall be, the time of the heathen. And the sword shall come upon Egypt, and great pain shall be in Ethiopia. When the slain shall fall in Egypt, and they shall take away her multitude, and her foundation shall be broken down. Ethiopia and Libya and Lydia, and all the mingled people of Chud, and the men of the land that is in league shall fall with them by the sword. Thus says Ahijah, mighty God, They also that uphold Egypt shall fall, and the pride of her power shall come down. From the tower of Sarin shall they fall in it by the sword, says Ahijah. And they shall be desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her cities shall be in the midst of the cities that are wasted. And they shall know that I am Ahijah, mighty God, when I have set a fire in Egypt, and when all her helpers shall be destroyed. In that day shall messengers go forth from me in the ships, to make the careless Ethiopians afraid, and great pain shall come upon them, as in the day of Egypt. For lo, it cometh. Thus says Ahia, mighty God, I will also make the multitude of Egypt to cease by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, he and his people with him. The terrible of the nations shall be brought to destroy the land, and they shall draw their swords against Egypt, and fill the land with the slain. And I will make the rivers dry, and sell the land into the hand of the wicked. And I will make the land waste, and all that is therein, by the hand of the strangers. I, Ahia, have spoken it. Thus says Ahia el Elohi, I will also destroy the idols, and will cause their images to cease out of Noph. And there shall be no more a prince of the land of Egypt. I will put a fear in the land of Egypt. And I will make Pathros desolate, and will set fire in Zoan, and will execute judgment in No. I will pour my fury upon Sin, the strength of Egypt, and I will cut off the multitude of No. And all will set fire in Egypt. Sin shall have great pain, and No shall be rent asunder, and Noph shall have distresses daily. The young men of Even and of Pibeseth shall fall by the sword, and these cities shall go into captivity. At Tahaphanes also the day shall be darkened, when I shall break there the yokes of Egypt, and the pomp of her strength shall cease in her, and as for her a cloud shall cover her, and her daughters shall go into captivity. Thus will I execute judgment in Egypt, and they shall know that I am Ahia, mighty God. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the 1st month, in the 7th day of the month, that the word of mighty God Ahia came unto me, saying, Son of man, I have broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and lo, it shall not be bound up to be healed, to put a roller to bind it, to make it strong to hold the sword. Therefore thus says Ahia, mighty God, Behold, I am against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and will break his arms, the strong and that which was broken, and I will cause the sword to fall out of his hand. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse them through the countries. And I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, and put my sword in his hand. But I will break Pharaoh's arms, and he shall groan before him with the groanings of a deadly wounded man. But I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, and the arms of Pharaoh shall fall down, and they shall know that I am Ahia, when I shall put my sword into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall stretch it out upon the land of Egypt. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and disperse them among the countries, and they shall know that I am Ahia, mighty God. And we're going to stop at chapter 30. Thank you for listening.